In a vast desert, under the deep, starry night sky, a lone pilot sat beside his broken plane, feeling the weight of his hopeless situation. He had been stranded for days with no sign of rescue, his thoughts a swirl of frustration. Just as he began to lose hope, a small, unexpected voice broke the silence.
"Please, draw me a sheep,"
said the voice, soft and yet certain. Startled, the pilot looked up. There, standing before him, was a young boy. His golden hair shimmered in the moonlight, and his eyes held an ancient wisdom that seemed far beyond his years. This was the first moment the pilot met the little prince. The boy's request seemed strange, but the pilot, compelled by curiosity, grabbed a piece of paper and drew a simple sketch of a sheep. The little prince frowned.
"That's not a sheep,"
he said, shaking his head.
"Try again."
So, the pilot drew another one, this time with a different approach. The little prince still didn't like it. It wasn't until the pilot drew a box, telling the boy,
"Here's a sheep inside the box,"
that the little prince's face lit up.
"That's it. That's the one,"
the boy exclaimed. And so began the little prince's story, a tale of distant stars and strange adventures, told by a child whose heart had witnessed the wonders of the universe. The little prince's first stop was a tiny asteroid, where a lone king sat upon a grand throne. The throne was more fitting for a palace, but the king's kingdom consisted only of a few scattered stars.
"Why do you command stars that cannot hear you?"
the little prince asked, his gaze curious and innocent. The king, swathed in robes and a crown, puffed out his chest with pride.
"Because it makes me feel powerful. I am their ruler, and they obey me."
The little prince stood quietly, puzzled. The king's command was not for the benefit of anyone, not even himself. His kingdom was vast, yet empty, and the stars were silent to his rule. As the little prince departed, he thought deeply about the king's need for obedience. Power without purpose was no more than an illusion. On his next stop, the little prince arrived at an asteroid inhabited by a vain man. The man was finely dressed, standing alone in front of a mirror, admiring himself.
"Clap for me, so I may be admired,"
the vain man demanded, his eyes sparkling with self-importance. The little prince, somewhat puzzled, clapped his hands softly. Then, he stopped.
"But why do you need my applause when you are alone?"
he asked. The vain man's expression never faltered.
"Because being admired is the most important thing of all."
The little prince couldn't help but feel a deep sadness for the man. Admiration, when it wasn't shared or earned through love, seemed like an empty pursuit. He left the vain man to his solitary world, realizing that admiration alone could not fill the heart. Next, the little prince visited an asteroid covered in paper and clutter, where a businessman was busily counting stars.
"I own these stars.
The businessman muttered, his voice deep in concentration.
I count them every day."
The little prince, curious, asked.
"What do you do with them?"
"Nothing.
The businessman replied, not looking up.
I just own them. I just own them."
"But why?"
The businessman paused for a moment, his thoughts lost in the vastness of his ownership. There was no joy in his work, no sharing, no connection. The little prince felt a deep sense of sorrow for him. Ownership, without meaning or purpose, was a hollow burden. Finally, the little prince arrived on Earth, where he met a fox in a golden field. The fox, with gentle eyes, approached the boy slowly.
"Tame me,"
the fox said softly.
"and we will need each other. To me, you will be unique in all the world."
The little prince, intrigued, asked.
"What does it mean to tame?"
The fox looked at him, its eyes wise and knowing.
"It means to create bonds. You become responsible for what you tame. You will make me unique, and I will make you unique."
As the fox spoke, the little prince understood. The bonds we form with others, whether with friends, animals, or loved ones, are what make life meaningful. It was his love for his Rose, back on his home asteroid, that made her special, not because she was rare, but because of the time and care he had invested in her. Back in the desert, the little prince finished telling his story to the pilot. His voice was soft, yet filled with understanding.
I now see what is essential.
The little prince said, a small smile on his face.
My Rose is special, not because she is rare, but because of the time I spent caring for her.
The pilot nodded, a new light in his eyes.
What is essential is invisible to the eye.
He said, his voice filled with the wisdom of the boy's words. The little prince gazed at the stars, his heart full of love and longing for the Rose he had left behind. He had learned that the most important things in life were not seen with the eyes, but felt deeply with the heart. The next morning, as the sun began to rise over the desert, the little prince was gone. The pilot, his plane now repaired, prepared to fly home. But he was forever changed. He would never forget the lesson the little prince had taught him, that true worth is found not in things, but in the love we give and receive. Moral lesson: the story of the little prince teaches us that the most important things in life, love, friendship, and genuine connection, cannot be seen with the eyes. They can only be felt with the heart.